The Desert Trap. Captain Sarah Mitchell gripped the controls of her A-10 Thunderbolt as she soared through the scorching Afghan sky. The desert stretched endlessly below, a sea of tan and brown that had swallowed countless soldiers over the years. Sarah had been flying combat missions for 3 years, but today felt different. Something in the air seemed heavy with danger. Her radio crackled to life. Hawkeye 7, this is ground control. We have a situation developing in Sector 7. Multiple teams are reporting heavy contact. Sarah's heart rate quickened. Sector 7 was deep in Taliban territory, where the mountains created perfect hiding spots for enemy fighters. She knew American forces operated there, but intelligence suggested it should have been relatively quiet today. Copy, ground control. What's the nature of the contact? Unknown at this time. We're getting fragmented communications. Something big is happening down there. Sarah banked her aircraft toward the coordinates, her weapon systems humming with deadly potential. The A-10 was built for one purpose: close air support for ground troops. Its massive 30mm cannon could turn enemy positions into dust, and its armor could withstand incredible punishment. But even the mighty Thunderbolt had limits. As she approached Sector 7, Sarah could see smoke rising from multiple locations. Her radio exploded with panicked voices, overlapping transmissions that painted a picture of chaos below. She tried to sort through the confusion, picking out call signs and unit designations. Then she heard it, a transmission that made her blood run cold. This is SEAL Team Delta. We are surrounded and taking heavy fire. Request immediate air support. We have wounded and are running low on ammunition. Sarah's training kicked in. She knew the protocols by heart. Any close air support mission required approval from higher command. She needed coordinates verified by forward air controllers on the ground. She needed confirmation of friendly positions to avoid tragic friendly fire incidents. Most importantly, she needed permission to engage. But the voices on the radio told a different story. These weren't routine requests for support. These were desperate men fighting for their lives. SEAL Team Delta, this is Hawkeye 7. I'm overhead your position. Can you mark your location with smoke? Negative, Hawkeye 7. Enemy is too close. Any smoke will give away our exact position. We're in the valley, northwest corner, behind the large boulder formation. Sarah searched the terrain below. The valley was a maze of rocks, caves, and hiding spots. She could see muzzle flashes from multiple locations, but distinguishing friend from foe seemed impossible from her altitude. Her radio buzzed again. Hawkeye 7, this is command. You are not authorized to engage without proper forward air controller guidance. Return to base immediately. Sarah's jaw tightened. She could see the battle raging below. American soldiers were pinned down, possibly dying, while she circled overhead with enough firepower to change everything. But orders were orders, and breaking them could end her career and possibly result in court-martial. SEAL Team Delta, how many personnel do you have? We have 124 souls down here, Hawkeye 7. Mixed units got caught in a coordinated ambush. We walked right into their trap. 124. American servicemen. Sarah had never heard of such a large special operations force operating together in this area. Something had gone terribly wrong with their mission planning. What's your ammunition status? We're down to our last magazines. Maybe 15 minutes of defensive fire left. They're closing in from 3 sides. Sarah could hear the gunfire intensifying through the radio. Automatic weapons chattered constantly, punctuated by the occasional explosion of grenades or mortars. The enemy clearly had the SEALs surrounded and was preparing for a final assault. Command, this is Hawkeye 7. I have eyes on heavy enemy activity in Sector 7. Request permission to provide immediate close air support. Negative, Hawkeye 7. No forward air controller is available in that sector. You are ordered to return to base immediately. Do not engage without proper authorization. Sarah stared down at the battlefield. She could see movement in the rocks, dozens of figures advancing toward what must be the American position. The enemy had patience and numbers. They were taking their time, setting up for a coordinated attack that would overwhelm the trapped SEALs. Her fuel gauge showed she had maybe 40 minutes of flying time left. After that, she would have to return to base regardless of the situation on the ground. Those men below didn't have 40 minutes. SEAL Team Delta, what's your casualty status? We have 17 wounded, 3 critical. We can't move them, and we can't leave them behind. 17 wounded men who couldn't be moved. Even if rescue helicopters were dispatched immediately, they would never arrive in time. The enemy was preparing to overrun the position within minutes. Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for years to come. She switched off her identification transponder, the device that allowed command to track her exact location and movements. If she was going to break orders, she didn't want every detail recorded. SEAL Team Delta, describe your exact position one more time. We're behind a large rock formation that looks like a horseshoe, opens to the south. Enemy is approaching from the north, east, and west. They've got us in a classic kill box. Sarah spotted the formation. It stood out from the surrounding terrain like a natural fortress, but it had become a trap. She could see muzzle flashes from the American position, bright sparks in the shadow of the rocks. Around them, advancing in careful bounds, dozens of enemy fighters moved closer. Her weapon systems showed green across the board. 30mm cannon ready, rockets armed. She had enough firepower to level a city block, but using it without proper authorization would destroy her career and possibly her life. The radio crackled again with increasing desperation. Hawkeye 7, they're massing for a final assault. We can see at least 60 fighters moving into position. We need help now. Sarah thought about her family back home. Her parents, who had always been proud of their daughter, the Air Force pilot. Her younger brother, who looked up to her as a hero. Her career, which she had worked so hard to build in a male-dominated field. Then she thought about 124 American servicemen about to die in a desert valley thousands of miles from home. She armed her weapon systems and began her attack run. SEAL Team Delta, keep your heads down. Cavalry is coming. I was breaking every rule. Sarah pushed her A-10 into a steep dive, the desert floor rushing up to meet her. Every instinct told her this was wrong. Every regulation she had memorized during flight school screamed that she was making a career-ending mistake, but the desperate voices on the radio drowned out everything else. Hawkeye 7, we can hear your engines. Enemy fighters are taking cover. Perfect. Even the sound of the A-10's twin turbofans was enough to make enemy combatants think twice. The Thunderbolt had earned its reputation as the most feared close-support aircraft in the world. Sarah lined up her first target, a cluster of rocks where she could see muzzle flashes and movement. The enemy had positioned themselves well, using natural cover to advance on the trapped SEALs. But cover that worked against small arms fire wouldn't protect them from 30mm cannon rounds. Her targeting system locked on. Sarah took a deep breath and squeezed the trigger. The A-10's massive GAU-8 cannon erupted to life with a sound like the world's largest chainsaw. Depleted uranium rounds tore into the mountainside at 3,900 rounds per minute, each projectile capable of punching through tank armor. The rocky outcropping where enemy fighters had been hiding simply disintegrated in a cloud of dust and debris. Direct hit! Direct hit! You got them, Hawkeye 7! But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. She could see enemy fighters scattering in all directions, seeking new cover. Some were dragging wounded comrades away from the destroyed position. Others were setting up in new locations, preparing to continue their assault on the SEALs. Her radio exploded with activity. Hawkeye 7, this is command. You are ordered to cease fire immediately. You do not have authorization to engage. Return to base now. Sarah ignored the transmission and lined up her second target, A group of fighters had taken position behind a low wall, continuing to pour fire toward the American position. She could see the green tracers from their weapons arcing through the air. Another burst from the cannon turned their cover into rubble. The wall simply vanished, taking the enemy fighters with it. Hawkeye 7, acknowledge transmission. Cease fire and return to base immediately. Instead, Sarah keyed her radio to the SEAL frequency. SEAL Team Delta, I count at least 40 more enemy fighters in various positions around your location. I'm going to make multiple passes to clear them out. Copy that, Hawkeye 7. You're giving us breathing room down here. First time we've been able to move our wounded to better cover. But Sarah knew she was fighting more than just enemy combatants. She was fighting time, fuel consumption, and an increasingly angry command structure that was demanding her immediate return. Her fuel gauge showed 32 minutes remaining. Every minute she spent in combat was a minute less she would have to reach friendly airspace. Worse, she could hear additional radio traffic indicating that command was scrambling fighters to intercept her. If she stayed much longer, she might find herself facing American F-16s sent to force her back to base. The enemy below had also adapted to her presence. They were no longer bunching up in large groups where her cannon could devastate them. Instead, they had spread out into individual fighting positions, making each target require a separate attack run. Sarah began a deadly game of aerial cat and mouse. She would spot an enemy position, line up for an attack run, and engage with either cannon fire or rockets. The enemy fighters would scatter, then regroup in new positions once she passed overhead. Each attack run required her to fly low and slow, making her vulnerable to ground fire. She could hear bullets hitting her aircraft's armored hull, the distinctive ping of metal on metal that reminded her how dangerous her situation had become. The A-10 was built to absorb punishment, but it wasn't invincible. SEAL Team Delta, what's your status down there? We're still pinned down, but you've eliminated maybe half their force. We're seeing them pull back from some positions. Keep hitting them, Hawkeye 7. Sarah's next target was a machine gun position that had been raking the SEAL position with continuous fire. She could see the weapon's muzzle flash, winking like a deadly star among the rocks. But as she lined up her attack, her radar warning receiver screamed to life. Hawkeye 7, this is Viper Flight. We are on intercept course to your position. You are ordered to break off your attack and follow us back to base immediately. Sarah's heart sank. 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons were approaching her position, sent by command to force her compliance. She was now facing a choice between saving the SEALs below and avoiding a potentially deadly confrontation with her own side. Viper Flight, I have 124 American personnel under attack down here. They will be overrun if I break off now. Hawkeye 7, you are not authorized for this engagement. Break off immediately, or we will be forced to take action. The F-16s appeared on the horizon, their sleek forms a stark contrast to her chunky A-10. They had speed and maneuverability on their side. If they decided to force her down, she would have few options. But the radio from the ground told a different story. Hawkeye 7. They're massing for another assault. We can see them moving into position. Don't leave us. Sarah made another impossible decision. She continued her attack run, ignoring the F-16s circling above. She lined up the machine gun position and fired, watching as her cannon rounds walked across the terrain and silenced the enemy weapon. Hawkeye 7, this is your final warning. Break off your attack now. Instead of responding to the F-16s, Sarah keyed her radio to the SEAL frequency. SEAL Team Delta, I'm going to make one more pass to clear the eastern approach. Then I'll have to break off. My fuel is getting critical. Copy that, Hawkeye 7. Thanks to you, we've been able to consolidate our position and treat our wounded. We might be able to hold out until additional support arrives. Sarah began her final attack run, targeting a group of enemy fighters who had been attempting to flank the SEAL position. But as she dove toward the target, her fuel warning light illuminated. She was down to emergency reserves. She had to make a choice. use her remaining fuel to attack the enemy and risk not making it back to base, or break off now and potentially leave the SEALs to face renewed assault. The voices on the radio made the choice for her. They're coming again. Massing on the eastern side. We need that one more pass, Hawkeye 7. The final stand. Sarah's fuel gauge showed 8 minutes of flying time remaining. 8 minutes to finish the fight and somehow make it back to friendly territory. The mathematics were brutal and unforgiving. She was too far from base to make it back on normal flight profile, and the F-16s circling above were growing increasingly insistent. Hawkeye 7, this is Viper Lead. We have been authorized to escort you back to base immediately. Do not make this more difficult than it needs to be. Sarah could hear the frustration in the F-16 pilot's voice. He was following orders, just like she should have been. But orders seemed irrelevant when American lives hung in the balance below. SEAL Team Delta, give me exact count on enemy fighters still active. We count approximately 25 hostiles in various positions. They're being more careful now, using better cover, but they're still surrounding us. They seem to be waiting for you to leave, smart enemy commanders. They had figured out that the A-10 was the only thing standing between them and victory. Once Sarah departed, they could resume their assault with overwhelming numbers against the exhausted and low-ammunition SEAL teams. Sarah's radar warning receiver continued its urgent beeping as the F-16s maintained their position above her. She knew the pilots in those aircraft. They were professionals following orders, trying to prevent an international incident and bring her home safely. In any other circumstances, she would have respected their authority and complied immediately. But 124 men were about to die. She spotted her target, the largest remaining group of enemy fighters positioned in a ravine that would allow them to assault the SEAL position from the east. If she could eliminate that group, it might buy enough time for rescue helicopters to arrive. Viper Flight, I'm making one final attack run, then I'm coming home. Negative, Hawkeye 7. Break off now. That's a direct order. Sarah ignored the transmission and pushed her stick forward. Diving toward the ravine, her targeting system locked onto the enemy position. She could see fighters moving between the rocks, setting up what appeared to be mortar tubes or rocket-propelled grenades. At 2,000 feet, she fired her remaining rockets. 4 Hydra 70 rockets streaked toward the ravine, their white smoke trails drawing perfect lines between her aircraft and the target. The explosions lit up the narrow space between the rocks, and Sarah could see debris flying in all directions. Direct hit on the eastern position. They're pulling back. You broke their assault formation. But Sarah's victory was short-lived. Her fuel warning system was now screaming continuously. She had perhaps 5 minutes of flying time left, and she was still deep in enemy territory. The nearest friendly airfield was at least 15 minutes away at normal cruising speed. She pulled out of her dive and climbed rapidly, trying to gain altitude for maximum glide distance. The A-10 might be built like a tank, but it glided like one too. If her engines quit, she would come down fast and hard. SEAL Team Delta, I have to break off now. Fuel is critical. Roger that, Hawkeye 7. We can't thank you enough. You saved our lives today. We're hearing helicopters in the distance now. Rescue is on the way. Sarah felt a moment of relief. If rescue helicopters were approaching, the SEALs might actually survive this nightmare. Her unauthorized intervention had bought them the time they needed, but her own survival was now in serious doubt. Viper Flight, I need an escort back to base. Fuel critical. Roger that, Hawkeye 7. We're with you. What's your fuel status? Less than 5 minutes at normal consumption. Copy. We'll escort you direct to Kandahar. Emergency crews are standing by. The F-16s took position on either side of her A-10, their pilots now focused on helping rather than hindering. Sarah pushed her throttles to minimum setting and adjusted her flight path for maximum fuel efficiency. Every gallon counted now. The desert stretched endlessly below, an ocean of sand and rock that could easily become her grave. She thought about the 124 men she had just saved, wondering if her career sacrifice had been worth it. There would be investigations, courts-martial, possibly criminal charges for disobeying direct orders in a combat zone. But those men were going home to their families. Hawkeye 7, Kandahar Tower has you on radar. Emergency vehicles are positioned and ready. What are your intentions if you run out of fuel? Sarah looked down at the hostile terrain below. Ejecting over Taliban territory would likely mean capture, torture, and death, but she still had one option. If engines quit, I'm putting her down wheels up on the nearest flat surface. This bird has brought me this far. She'll get me the rest of the way home. Her fuel gauges showed empty, but somehow her engines continued running. The A-10's fuel system was designed with multiple redundant pumps and tanks, squeezing every possible drop from its reserves. Kandahar in sight, called Viper Lead. You're going to make it, Hawkeye 7. Sarah could see the airfield in the distance, its runway lights creating a beacon of hope in the desert darkness. But her engines began surging irregularly, the first sign of fuel starvation. Tower, declaring emergency. Fuel exhaustion imminent. Roger. Hawkeye 7. Runway Aero 6 is cleared for emergency landing. Fire truck standing by. Sarah lined up her final approach, her engines now running on fumes and determination. The A-10 descended toward the runway like a wounded bird, but it was still flying. Her wheels touched down hard on the concrete, and she immediately applied maximum braking. Fire trucks raced alongside her aircraft as it rolled to a stop barely halfway down the runway. Her engines quit the moment she pulled the throttles to idle. Sarah sat in her cockpit for a long moment, hands shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. She had saved 124 American servicemen, broken countless regulations, defied direct orders, and nearly run out of fuel over enemy territory. Military police vehicles were already approaching her aircraft. The investigation would begin immediately. Her career was over, but those men were alive. As she climbed down from her aircraft, Sarah heard her radio crackle one final time. Hawkeye 7, this is SEAL Team Delta. All personnel accounted for. Rescue complete. Thanks to you, everyone is going home. Sarah smiled and removed her helmet. Whatever came next, she could live with the consequences. She had done the right thing, even when it meant breaking every rule in the book. Sometimes the most important orders come from conscience, not command. Sarah armed her remaining rockets and prepared for what might be her final attack of the day. One way or another, this battle was about to reach its conclusion.